Hey folks, welcome back to the Q Shed Backyard Barbecue. It's Memorial Day weekend, which is a solemn yet celebratory time where we remember those who have sacrificed everything for our country. We also tend to have cookouts. For whatever reason, we want to get together. Maybe it's just an excuse, or maybe it's a good way to celebrate everything that our great country stands for, and what better way to do it than with barbecue. So today specifically is Saturday, May 29th. Among other things, it is also WSM Smoke Day number 17, as you can see by my t-shirt here. So I heard about this through Chris Ellingham, who runs the Virtual Weber Bullet Forum, and that's a great forum. Check it out if you haven't already. All things Weber grills are on there, and different divisions within the forum and so forth. You can get questions answered, share photos of your cooks and your cookers. So I've gotten some good information from that forum on my Weber Smoky Mountain. Speaking of that, today I'm going to celebrate WSM Smoke Day 17 by doing a cook on my 22.5-inch Weber Smoky Mountain. Today we're going to be doing pork butt, hot and fast. Going to try to cook it at around 325 degrees on average probably, and try to get it done inside of 5 hours. So in just a minute here, we'll take a look at the cooker setup and we'll get the meat prepped. Thanks again for joining us. So you can see the setup here in the Weber Smoky Mountain. Getting ready to dump a full chimney of lit coals on top, but we have here a beast basket from Greg at the Woodshed Smoke and Barbecue, and it is, I don't know, probably 2/3 full of Kingsford Professional briquette charcoal. So this is Kingsford's hot burning competition charcoal, and I have some apple and pecan chunks scattered throughout it, and then once it gets up to temp and we get rid of some of that bad smoke before the meat goes on, I'll throw a couple larger chunks of pecan on. But right now we will go ahead and dump that chimney of lit coals. Now, if we were going for a longer term cook, I would have put fewer lit coals on there and probably started from the middle, but I'm going for a hot and fast cook today, so we'll get the rest of the Weber Smoky Mountain put together and start bringing it up to temp. So the first thing we're going to do is get our pork butt prepped and ready to go on the Weber Smoky Mountain once it comes up to temp, probably in about another 25-30 minutes, I would say. What I'm starting with is boneless Swift brand pork shoulder butt from Costco. So take a look at that there. It is not what I normally use. I normally do bone-in pork shoulders, but today I'm going for hot and fast cook, as I said. So I'm going to trim these very little, but I am going to cut them into sections to get them cooked a little faster. So I may have failed to mention that these pork shoulders from Costco come in a twin pack. So the total weight here is a little over 17 pounds. So each pork shoulder is roughly 8.5 pounds or so. So good sized shoulders, and that's with the bone removed, of course. And so what you end up with, though, is a sort of unwieldy piece of meat to cook because of the fact that the shoulder blade was removed here. So normally, if I was going to cook these low and slow, more traditionally, I would tie them so that they stay in one piece and cook more evenly. But today I'm going to take advantage of the fact that they're already cut like this, and I'm going to trim them into 2 pieces each and try to keep the thickness roughly equal from one to the other. So just taking a look here, and you can see one side here is thicker than this side. So what I'm going to do is just come right down here. There's a whole lot more art than science here. Okay, separate the two pieces. So there's no getting around the fact that this one is not exactly even, but in terms of thickness, but it'll be what it'll be. We'll just check it as we go. This piece is much thicker. It's going to take longer to cook, so I'll just bear that in mind as we go. Now, I'm not going to do much trimming at all here. The fat cap here on this side I'm going to leave. It will absolutely render. Okay, so we'll get the other one trimmed up and cut up similarly, and be back for the next step of the process, which is applying a binder and putting our rub on. Okay, so we've got the two boneless pork shoulders trimmed to the degree that I'm going to trim them, and cut in half. So we've got the thicker portion separated from the, I don't know, mangled portion, I guess you'd call it, which is what happens when they cut the shoulder blade out. And what I'm going to do today is use just simple yellow mustard as a binder. Purpose of it is not really for flavor, just to help the rub adhere and create a bark. And then for a rub today, I just made up 50-50 kosher salt and coarse ground black pepper. And that's all I'm doing. I'm not putting any sweet element in there. I'm not putting any paprika. Paprika can tend to get cakey, and I've used that in rubs in the past. I've used brown sugar in rubs, and you can certainly do so, and there's nothing wrong with it. It tastes great. I just gravitated to more simple rubs, basically salt and pepper. So that's what we're going to do today, see how it turns out. And when we're applying that, just get a good even coat. I'm going to go less heavy on the thinner parts here than on the thicker parts. Just like any other cut, the bigger the cut of meat, the more seasoning it can take, and in fact the more seasoning it probably needs. So something like that. You want to shake up any rub from time to time because the particles are different sizes, and the heavier bits will sink to the bottom, like salt in this case. So there you go. A little bit heavier over here on these thicker pieces. You want to get the sides as much as you can, always. Okay, so we've got these boneless pork butts seasoned up with our 50-50 salt and pepper rub, and we are about ready to get them on the Weber Smoky Mountain. So I'll see you over there at the cooker. Okay, so since this is WSM Smoke Day number 17, it probably makes sense to talk a little bit about the WSM, or the Weber Smoky Mountain. I've done a video on this one before with all of my mods. As you can see, this is not by any means a stock Weber Smoky Mountain, but you can check out my other video if you would like, specific to the mods. But this is a 22.5-inch Weber Smoky Mountain, or WSM, as we call them affectionately. And they also make an 18-inch version. Mine's the bigger one. And as you can see, or maybe not, it is right at 325 degrees, which is my goal temperature for this cook, and this is with an ambient probe running through here and sitting on the top rack right about here. So there's bottom grate right about this level, and then the top grate sits right about here at the lid seam. And I have a diverter plate, a steel diverter plate, down below the bottom grate so that the heat doesn't hit the meat directly. It's an indirect method of cooking. My diverter plate is a 1/4 inch thick, 19-inch diameter piece of steel. And on top of that, for a drip pan, I have a 19-inch pizza pan. Setup works really well to divert the heat. The WSM comes with a water pan. that you can either fill with water. Some guys fill them with sand. Some guys line them with foil and fill them with nothing. But I've chosen to go with a steel diverter plate. It doesn't, as the water pan does, being shaped like a big bowl, it tends to impinge down into the charcoal basket. And especially since I have a larger than normal charcoal basket, I don't want that for longer cooks. I'd like to be able to put as much charcoal as I can in there. So the steel diverter plate works really well. And the pizza pan on top does a great job catching any drippings. So right now we're up to target temp, and there's not a lot of smoke coming out of the WSM. By the way, I have the 3 bottom vents about 1/4 open each, and the top vent here is about 1/4 open as well, and it's sitting right at that 325 degree range on the top rack. So the level of smoke you see now is perfectly fine for a charcoal cooker. Initially, when you dump the lit coals onto a large amount of cold charcoal, you're going to get a ton of smoke, and it's not good smoke. So you want to wait until that burns down, until it warms up and comes up to temp, and then put the meat on. So that was about 45 or 50 minutes ago that I dumped the coals, and at this point I like the level of smoke that I'm seeing, and I like the temp. So we're going to go ahead and get the meat on. Okay, so as you can see, we have the pork shoulders on the Weber Smoky Mountain, the 2 thicker pieces on the bottom rack, 2 thinner pieces on the top rack here, and not much to do for a while, so I'm going to get it closed up. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours and 20 minutes since I put the meat on, and I have not opened it or anything in that time, other than about 1 minute ago when I repositioned the meat on the top rack, just so that it's not dripping down directly on the meat on the bottom rack. But let's open it up and take a quick look at what we've got going on. As you can see, we've got good color, good bark formation. Yeah, definitely forming well. See the meat down on the bottom rack, coming along nicely as well. I did want to, again, move these top pieces a little off to the side so that the bottom pieces have a better chance to form bark. Just going to give it a quick spritz at this point and then get it shut back up. Okay, we'll get that lid shut up so I can continue to cook. Okay, so we're 3.5 hours into the cook, and I just pulled the 2 smaller pieces off of the top rack, and they temped right at 175 degrees. This one's come down to, yeah, right at 175. So I am going to wrap them in foil. You can see there's a nice crusty bark formed on there. I like that a lot. They're not done yet. We're going to take them to probably between 200 and 205 internal temp, but more importantly, we're going to get them to a nice probe tenderness that will tell us when they're done. So I just again spritzed with a little half and half apple cider vinegar and apple juice, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up. You want to wrap this just like all other meat tightly. You don't want to give any extra room to steam any more than it already will. It'll cost you some of that nice bark, so we don't want to do that. But this will speed up the cooking process by wrapping. They've got all the smoke at this point that they need, so I'm going to check the larger sections of the meat and see if they need wrapped as well. We'll see you back in a bit. Okay, so here's one of the two larger pieces of the pork shoulder, and it temped internally about 165, so about 10 degrees below the smaller pieces. The other larger piece was right in that range as well. I'm going to wrap them as well. I want to speed the cook up, and that will do so, especially with the larger pieces. They will take longer, so we're going to get them wrapped as well. Same drill. I'm going to use some spritz just to give a little moisture in the foil. Not that I think they're anywhere close to drying out, but a little moisture from the apple cider vinegar and apple juice never hurts. So again, tightly. Double wrap because you don't want the foil leaking, and I'm going to put a probe in the thickest part of this one when I put it back on so that we can monitor the internal temperature from here on out. Again, we're looking for around 200 degrees or so, and then we'll start probing for tenderness. Okay, so we're right at 5 hours into this hot and fast pork shoulder cook on the Weber Smoky Mountain today, and I'm getting an internal temp on one of the two larger cuts of right about 197, and so I'm guessing that means the smaller cuts are definitely done. So I'm going to check them for temp and also to make sure, more importantly, that they're probe tender, and probably get them pulled. Let's take a look. One of the smaller cuts here, yeah, I'm getting 209, and more importantly, yeah, it's once you get through that foil, it's going through like butter. Yeah, those are very much probe tender, no resistance at all, which is what you want. Alright, so the two larger ones are pretty darn tender, reading about, try over here, right about 200 now, 196. I'm going to leave them for just a few more minutes. Okay, so we've reached the moment of truth. We cooked 2 boneless pork shoulders on the Weber Smoky Mountain, hot and fast, averaging about 325 degrees. Okay, the idea was to get them done inside of 5 hours. We were right about 5 hours by the time the 2 thickest cuts were ready. Those were at about 207 or 8 degrees internal temp, but more importantly, they were probing tender, so they were done. We unwrapped them, let them cool for about 15 minutes, wrapped them back up in foil, and then put them in a dry cooler to rest. They've been resting for about an hour now, and it's time to pull them out and go ahead and get them pulled so that we can make some delicious pulled pork for pizzas that we're doing later tonight. So let's see what we've got. Okay, so here's one of the 2 larger sections of pork butt that we did on the Weber Smoky Mountain, hot and fast today, and I'm wearing glove liners with these nitrile gloves outside. It keeps your hands clean, but it also gives you the ability to handle hot food, and this pork is still fairly warm. So let's see what we've got when we go to start pulling it. You can see it just wants to absolutely fall apart, which is a great sign. Okay, so when I'm doing pulled pork, I like to kind of break it up like this, let it cool a little bit more so it's even easier to handle. You want to get rid of the inedible parts, or the parts that don't look tasty. Okay, so the fat that didn't render, the sort of gristly pieces, you can feel it as you go through. Just separate it out. Sometimes I use a vinegar finishing sauce over the pork, but tonight we're doing pizzas on the Weber Kettle Grill, and I don't want the vinegar on there. I just want the pork to to stand out. So we've got it all mixed together. You can see the little bits of bark in there with the rest. There's our pile of pulled pork. It's time to taste it. Okay, ready for the moment of truth. This is always the best part. A piece with a little bit of bark. Nice and moist, good flavor. Not too heavy a smoke flavor. I used a mix of pecan and apple wood in the Weber Smoky Mountain today, and didn't overdo it in terms of the amount of wood that I used. I like the combination. I always get a different flavor too with my Smoky Mountain versus my big Cascade Smokers cooker, which is kind of cool. Every different cooker has a different flavor profile. I really like this. I like the fact that I did it in about 5 hours versus 12 or sometimes even 14 for pork butts done the traditional way, more low and slow, around 250 degrees. They're great both ways, but it's nice to know that if you're in a pinch for time, you can knock out pork butts this way, hot and fast. Big success, turned out really well, I think. I'll definitely do this again, especially if I'm, again, in a time crunch. So on this Memorial Day, please remember those who have sacrificed and given everything for this country. Take care. We'll see you soon.